Good day to everybody who's joined us. My name is Adam Elvin. I am a solution architect at Board Australia. Today we are going to take you through about a half-hour webinar. We're going to be talking about the Board Lease Accounting application, or as it pertains to IFRS 16. So for today's agenda, a quick introduction from me on board. For those of you who don't know us, we will then discuss what lease accounting is, or what the Board Lease Accounting is. Followed on from that, we will have a demonstration from my colleagues, or rather two of my colleagues, Chris and Pat, who will be taking you through the actual accounting demonstration itself, followed by some customer references, and at the end we'll have some time for some Q&A. So please get your questions in the chat box. Board is an international software vendor. We are headquartered in Chiasso in Switzerland, also co-headquartered in Boston, Massachusetts. We were founded in 1994. We're focused exclusively on one product, which is Board. We'll talk a bit more about what that product is in just a few slides. It won't take long, I promise. So globally, 3,000 plus customers with a wide network of business partners and implementation partners. Companies growing strongly. It has done for a long time. The technology which you will see is grown organically as well. So never have we integrated other technology from other places. It's an organically grown technology. Global, as I mentioned before, for those of you in Australia, obviously we have local presence in Sydney and in Melbourne. So what is Board as a platform? It's a tool which combines business intelligence, predictive analytics, and performance management. So what does that mean for a customer? It means that within one place, within one product, with one tool set, one set of skills, you'll be able to cover off interactive dashboarding, analytics, self-service reporting, scenario management, what-if simulation, any budgeting, forecasting, planning that you may have, financial consolidation, strategy planning, and lots more. So I wouldn't be a software vendor if I didn't put either an accolade slide or a custom slide up. So here's the first of them. Gartner in particular list us in 4 magic quadrants. And now again, just to hark back to what I said earlier, it's important to note that we are in all 4 of those quadrants with one product. Just finally, before we move on to the demonstration, again, list of customers that we have globally. We have customers locally as well in Australia, all reaping the benefits of that integrated platform. So without further ado, I would like to hand over the baton to Pat initially, who will then give you a quick introduction to what lease accounting is and what that means and how Board can address that, and then onto a product demonstration. So thank you, enjoy the webinar, and I will talk to you after the end of the demonstration.
Hello. So Board's lease accounting application is built upon the same platform that all of our offerings are available to our customers and prospects. So once you learn how to use the platform application, it is the same feature set and capabilities, and also learning curve as it relates to the lease accounting area. In order to satisfy the lease accounting area, Board has addressed this by incorporating both international as well as US GAAP requirements. Now, the 2 standard setters had started together on this process, and somewhere down the line, they diverged and created different principles. So Board's lease accounting application is something that satisfies both IFRS from an international standard, IFRS 16, and US GAAP from an ASC 842 compliance. Now, the way that Board has gone about its application approach is looking this in a step process. So the first step is being able to easily configure the application and collect data. Now, this data can be collected from data loading process. Now, because many folks may not have their existing lease in a data repository. If you do, great. We can integrate, and Board has built-in ETL or extract, transform, and load capabilities to bring that data into the application. If not, then Board's ETL capabilities can also import from an Excel starting point, because most organizations will have all of their lease information on an Excel data sheet that they've started to use to identify all of their lease contracts. The key here is that Board's configuration and easy adaptability enables us to integrate with multiple different environments and pull that data into the application. Step 2 is to give the users that are administering the lease accounting procedures control and visibility into the entire process. So it allows you to create a decentralized use of the application. What I mean by that is, instead of having group accounting enter 24 new leases every month, as an example, or every quarter or every year, if you actually have 12 subsidiaries, it's much easier for each of those subsidiaries to simply provide you the information for 2 leases every month, quarter, or year, and then for group to actually review it before approving the journal output that the lease accounting application is going to provide. The third step is managing. So being able to see the numerics, the financial implications, manage the data that's been entered, modify it, have an audit trail and tracking of who's changed what financial elements, when they've changed it, rolling forward the data from one period to the next so you ensure continuity, and keeping track of any existing contracts that have been modified. So all of this within the application. Step 4, being able to actually do modeling on this data. Now, we know that lease accounting is a standard that is driving your actual financial statement output for actual data. But the key here is, much like folks that are providing asset accounting or depreciation, and then when they do financial planning and analysis, being able to predict or project the future depreciation impact as it relates to existing assets for future planning purposes. So that same capability is available within the lease application, projecting out the future lease impact both on the balance sheet, the statement of cash flows, and the income statement as required. Not only that, but being able to model. So as you're going through lease negotiations with some significant vendors and so on, whether you are the lessor or the lessee, to be able to model those, see the impacts, be able to compare different iterations of negotiations to see which one is one that your organization is happy to commit to or sign with. So lots of different modeling capabilities and what-if capabilities. And lastly, but not least, is disclosure. So the same strength in the Board application when it comes to reporting, whether it is standard reporting, grid style of reporting, graphical reporting, dashboard style of reporting, with drill down, drill through, drill anywhere on the data set, to enable you to have complete flexibility, self-service reporting, and ad hoc reporting capabilities. And all of this you'll see within the Board lease accounting application. So highlighting a couple of the key features as it relates to Board lease accounting's application and platform is that ability to do modeling, the ability to support multi-currency so that you can enter contracts in their local currency and being able to report at it at any consolidated or group currency. We have automated, our prepackaged application has already automated the mathematical rules and calculations required by both the IFRS International Standards for IFRS 16 and the US standards for ASC 842. Again, having complete visibility and control and monitoring over this. And this is true whether you decide to apply the Board application on an on-premise or cloud application. It is the exact same software regardless of your deployment methodology. And our cloud has all of the certifications, as you'll see in a second. Collaborative decision making so that you can go through checklist controls for inclusion or exclusion of leases, have visibility over some of these compliance questionnaires. As we talked about, flexibility when it relates to reporting, whether it's analytics so that you can do ad hoc analysis, drill down, drill anywhere, or self-service reporting so that users of the application and the environment can report on an ad hoc basis on any information that's in the application repository. So this is Board's platform software approach, specifically as it relates to the lease accounting application. Now, as I said, any deployment option, cloud or on-premise, it's the same product, and our cloud has various certifications from a control perspective. So ISO 27001, as well as a SOC 1 Type 2 compliance capabilities, and these can all be viewed on Board's website.
Thanks, Pat. I'm now going to take you through the process for IFRS 16. You'll see now I've come into the front menu for the Board leasing appliance here, and a nice, simple, easy to use browser-based system, so you can use it on your Safari browser, your Chrome browser, anything with a browser-based system. You'll also see, by the way, the appliance deals with both the process from a lessor and a lessee perspective, which is quite unique. So let's go in from a lessee perspective. For the select process here, I'm now brought into my front screen. This now gives me a couple of very useful facts. It shows me the alerting status on the right hand side here, so I can see exactly where I am in my various different checks and balances I've done. It shows me the process controls that are complete. Probably my first port of call as an accountant is always in the process monitoring, because I want to see exactly where we are in the process at this moment in time. So you now see workflow, which is a critical part of Board. And here I can see my different business units. I can see the general settings have been done, the applicability checklist, the posting journals, the currency conversion, with relating to a specific period, month, year combination. But I really want to show you how the system works. So let's start off with the applicability checklist. Now, the second thing you see here is this system works under both ASC 842 and IFRS 16. And this can be done within the one application. So if you have to comply with both standards, that is fully supported. But in my case, we're looking at IFRS 16, so I'm going to say no, and this will take me now directly into the IFRS 16 checks. So here you see a series of questions I'm going to have to go through. If, on the other hand, I went back to my home screen here, if instead of choosing the no option here, I select the applicability checker and this time say yes, what you'll now see is a completely different set of questions based around compliance with ASC 842. So here you see things like the bright line test and also difference on the association of an operating lease and a financing lease, which has to be done for the American standard. But in my case, we're going to focus on IFRS 16. So let's just go back there one more time. We'll say no here, and now I'm faced with the IFRS 16 list. Now, in this particular case, Board has worked with Ernst & Young, a firm of consultants from the audit arm, to make sure the questions and answer dialogue here are compliant with IFRS 16. So now on the right hand side, you can see I can choose a contract type here. I've got my different contracts in the middle. I can see here I brought in all my leasing transactions from a contract management system, or I could upload them from Excel. But in my case, I want to choose a particular one. Maybe I'm just going to focus in on the cars at this moment in time. And what you can see now is that I've got a checklist pending situation here. And what I can now do on the right hand side is go through my attestations. And I can either do this for a group of things such as cars, warehouse, etc., or I can do it by individual contract summary. That's your choice. The question I have to answer now is this an identifiable asset? Yes, it's a car. Do you have the right of substitution? Yes, I do. Do I obtain the benefits of the lease? Yes, I do. Do I have effective control? Yes. Is the contract duration greater than 12 months? Yes. And let's, in this case, let's create a no situation. Let's say the value of that vehicle is less than $5,000. If I just go ahead and save on that, what you'll now see is Board calculates that, and it's now said for my car products here, IFRS 16 is not applicable. Well, in point of fact, it would have to be a pretty cheap car to be below that level. I'm actually going to say yes, the asset is worth more than that. And now you see it says IFRS is required. But also there's an override capability. So if for some particular reason you did not have to apply with IFRS here, I can simply go ahead and I can force the skip of the checklist in this particular case. So therefore I will not have to comply with the checklist. Now I've dealt with bringing contracts in automatically here from contract management system. I can also create new contracts myself. So at the moment I've shown you bringing it in from a contract management system, but if I want to add a new contract here, I can simply give it a code, 1, 2, 3, 4, descriptions. This is going to be, let's say, special asset. And I then have to define the properties of that asset. So which reporting unit does it belong to? Let's say it belongs to contract number 10 here. And the type of asset, let's say it's going to be an office asset. Submit, and that will now add that new asset into my system. Once I'm complete, I press the confirm contract creation, and that now finishes my process at this stage. So let's now leave the applicable to checklist and go into the contract manager view of the world. Now here you see the detail of the contracts. I can see at the top here, I've got the actual contract itself. I've got the ability to have multiple versions to that. I have the lease payment. There could be a prepayment. The frequency of payment. So is it monthly, quarterly, biannual, annual, etc. And here I have the ability to override the settings that came in from the contract management system. Discount rate. I can either enter the discount rate for each individual contract, or there's a systemic wide discount rate. Here I've chosen to enter discount rate. Currency. The system is fully multi-currency. So here I've said it's euro, just a simple click box, and I can choose from any other currency here. So fully supporting all currencies. I specify the reporting unit, the contract type, and of course board is date aware. So now you see I've got the starting date specified for the contract, the ending date. Also, by the way, you can have an end of useful life date, because whilst the contract may not end, as in this case, till 2028, it's possible that the effective date of the lease ending could in fact be later or earlier, depending upon the dilapidation of the unit. We can also create a modification to that as well. We can deal with balloon payments and specifically deal with subleasing. And here I've got on this particular asset down here, I have a sublease rental and a sublease starting date here, and again a different discount rate. But not only can you deal with those kinds of costs and benefits, there are also other costs associated with it. So those could be semi-fixed costs. There might be an option to purchase. There could be a penalty in there, or there could be a variation in the contract. So as a contract manager here, I can revise all those assumptions until I'm happy that I have the right answers. Now, by the way, there is a full audit log behind the system, so any modifications made to that will be tracked by the auditing system. Let's leave that screen now, and let's go to the leasing viewer. So on the leasing viewer screen, and we'll go in as IFRS 16 here, what you now see is the summary information for those particular contracts. So here I can choose my reporting unit, a whole variety in this particular system. I could choose an individual contract. I could choose a currency. So you can filter down your view. What you now see is the individual lease payments. You can see the discount rate being calculated. Now this first lease here is only a short lease. It's only a 5-year period. And you can see the system has now calculated the interest expense based upon the discount rate and also the right of use value of that particular asset here. Down below you can see some other assets of longer term. This particular asset here has a life out of 10 years up till 2028. You can look at the lease payments themselves. So here's the discount rate. Here is the effective NPV type calculation, and there's the present value of that lease asset. It calculates the liability. So we have the initial liability, the splitting of the interest expense, the liability pay down as we reduce the value of the asset, and then finally here you see on the right hand side the final liability of that particular asset. We're calculating the right of use value of the asset, again using net present value techniques here. So we have taken the 736 per month here, and now we've restated that to net present value. So we can see the net present value of that particular asset here is 662, which gives you your right of use of asset. Likewise, then the ability to deal with subleases. So here's my sublease analysis, my sublease payment, my final sublease income. So completely covering the whole process of managing that particular lease. Well, once I've reviewed that, and I'm pretty happy with that lot, I could just jump in here to the lease summary, so I see all the information on one screen. Or probably what I'm more likely to do is now go into the area of generating journals, because of course the output from this system is designed to feed either your consolidation system or your general ledger with the values necessary to adjust entries for IFRS 16. Now here I've already generated the journals, and so I now have the results. The system is showing the relevant codes per your general ledger. You can have multiple general ledgers, different systems, different coding structures. What I now want to do though is understand the impact on my balance sheet. So I can see there's the right of use asset. And just like all aboard here, the ability to drill. So I can now see the adjustments by asset type. And if I now drill perhaps into office here, maybe down to contract, I can now see the real glorious technicolor detail of the journal postings that are about to be made. And you'll see here, of course, I split this between debit and credit, the different ledger entries, so balance sheet entries, P&L entries, etc. And as you can see here, the journals do correctly total back to 0 for posting. There's also the capability of raising manual posting entries too. In this case, I've chosen not to, but if you do, there's also a change log and an audit log being maintained. The penultimate part of my process now is currency conversion. So the system is in every way fully multi-currency. So here we have the currency rates has been set, average and closing, the display node, currencies, etc. So for each unit we can have different currencies, we can have journals and contracts inside that where the contract is in a different functional currency from that of the reporting unit. So these are now inspecting it. These are actually set within the administration settings. And finally then the generation of the posting journal itself, and that will then create either a file or it will write back to a table within your general ledger to create the posting entries. Well, that completes my walkthrough on the process. I'm now going to hand back to Pat to have a look at some of the reporting aspects of the system.
And let's first focus on some of the internal style of reporting that we have put in our internal reporting capsule as it relates to lease accounting. So here again, you'll see a dashboard landing page that can be shown in lots of graphical type of reporting. Again, these can be configured based on your individual situation that you'd like to see. Here again, the steps from left to right that you would have to review, and that if you were to go through, you would get the entire capabilities of the reporting environment. We're going to go through most of these today. So first of all, the status of our leases. So here, this first report is showing us some of the summary information that shows us a recap of our overall leases, the contracts, the contract type for what type of asset, the reporting unit, and so on. If we go to our contract recap, this is going to show us much more detailed information. So here you'll see for all of the individual leases, you will also see the ending date. And this has been sorted in date or chronological order from the most recent forward. And what this is doing is providing alerting capability. So in red are those leases that are going to expire in the next 3 months. In yellow are leases beyond that will expire in the next year. And in green, leases that don't have an expiration date till beyond a year from the period in question. Now, what this provides you is an easy visibility into those leases that your leasing organization needs to stay on top of, either from a renewal perspective, possibly an extension period, a purchase option, and so on. Now, there's much more to the reporting here. First of all, let's take a look at this left-hand side submenu here, and we can see that we can start identifying which leases are actually leveraging the average borrowing rate as part of its calculation purposes, and also notes that users can provide as to why. So the ability in the application to actually capture supporting documentation. This can be free-form text. This can be uploaded files from documentation, as we showed earlier, a copy of the PDF contract, and here documentation to support why we're using this interest rate methodology. And again, another summary report of contracts that are using the implicit rate. Same theory here, different lease contracts. Contracts with purchase options that have been enabled. And finally, from a auditability, you can see here that contracts that have been rolled forward from the previous period that have incurred modifications. So you'll see here the way we store these is by version. So version 00001 is the original lease data. And here you'll see in version 2 for this lease 10-0002 for equipment E12. And this description is just the numerical concept. Think of your chart of accounts. I'll have 1,000 is my account for cash. I can display just account one number 1,000, account cash, or account code 1,000 and description cash. So all of those can be done inside of the application. And here you'll see that this change was made after period 5. So this is the last period that it resulted unchanged. And then from that point forward, the data has changed because our lease payments have changed from 100,000 to 95,000 on a go forward basis. So complete visibility, and this will hold true in all of the leasing summary data on the summary version, the payment, the liabilities, the right of use, and the sublease components as well, so that wherever the change has been made, you can actually see the starting point and the resulting impact. Once we've taken a look at our contracts, we will go to our journal viewer. Now, this journal viewer is looking at our individual assets by years for the leases. Now, as we talked about, that self-service reporting, the ability for the user to take a look at a piece of information like our right of use asset and say, well, this is great. I can see it by asset classes, but I'd actually like to see this by individual reporting unit. So I can drill anywhere. I can decide to drill down by reporting unit, and now it's going to break out that right of use asset for fiscal 2019 by reporting unit, tying out each of the totals. And the drill down does not stop here. I can then drill down just for Acme support and actually see the individual contracts or contract types here. So by classifications, as you'll see, very silly report because I have the classifications along the columns and the rows, so it'll just be a diagonal seating. But that ability to slice and dice and take a look at the information at any layer of granularity that's stored in the application. You'll see here in the transaction currency of the individual lease or in the local currency for the individual leases. And this can also be filtered by different scenarios. So I can look at my actual data, my budget data, my reforecasting, showing that ability to do lots of what if analysis and forecasting capabilities on your lease data as well, to be able to isolate individual contracts or accounts with all of these page viewers as we see here. After we've looked at our journals, we may want to do some scenario comparison if we are doing what if analysis. Now here, I've only run certain leases in my actual data set, and I've run all of the leases for my actual, but only certain ones that I wanted to make some permutations for my budget scenario. So I can see the net difference. Obviously, this report is not very useful with the data that's been run there, but I can actually run all of the leases for any individual scenario and isolate my reporting by reporting unit, by individual month, by individual contract, so I can see the comparison if I'm doing some what if analysis there. Lastly, being able to look at this report in a graphical nature, just some samples. Again, all of this data can be viewed in any style, any information that you'd like as it relates to your lease data set. Lastly, in our next piece of information is to take a look at the external reporting. And the way we have separated our internal reporting capsules and our external reporting is the external reporting is focusing on the disclosure requirements as it relates to lease accounting. So what information needs to be displayed, which entities need to satisfy disclosure capabilities or elements, and what is the disclosure information. So here again, going from left to right, if we go to our settings screen, The settings screen is where we identify which reporting units need to satisfy with individual disclosure reporting. So by doing this, what it's going to allow us to do is to limit the fact that we only want to provide disclosure reporting for the entities that need to issue individual financial statements with notes, including on the total consolidated layer. So as we go into our disclosure areas, what we'll see is that we will be limited to the selection for these entities. So first, let's go into our lease disclosure and take a look at what I mean. So here, as we look at our information, I am now restricted only to those entities that I flag need to provide disclosure requirements. So let's take a look at our first entity, Acme Support EA. Here you'll see the current year, the prior year impact, and which financial statement note we are using to track this information and provide our disclosure data. Now, before we do so, what I'm going to do is just to show the interactivity and the real-time nature of this, I'm actually going to look at the disclosure validation status first. And if we take a look at this status, first for Acme Support, you'll see that for our right of use asset, this information and disclosure has already been provided, it's already been validated, but our liability disclosure has not. It is still pending review. So let's go ahead and actually launch our lease disclosure now and do this on a real-time basis. So in our lease disclosure, we're going to focus on that Acme Support EA. We're going to focus on the liability that still wasn't validated. As we drill into this information, you're going to see that now we are looking at the individual liability information detail, showing all of the contracts that are being displayed and included within the liability total component, our descriptive element where we can actually make modifications, we can add more info that is going to be included. And as soon as we're happy with these changes, we would actually save our changes and we would then validate the information. So currently, if you remember, and we go into our total disclosure, right now it is pending. So as soon as we validate this information, you'll see that our status changes to a validated. So by refreshing this page in here for Acme Support EA, as we talked about, oops, sorry, I actually went all the way. Oh, remember my clicks here. So now as we go to that summary information disclosure for Acme Support EA, you will see in a real time that now our liabilities have been changed to a validated status. So the ability to interactively have a process and order of operations and to interact with the data in a real-time basis. As soon as a change is made, that change is visible to all users in the application. Now, again, that drill down capability, drill anywhere, is available throughout the application as required, and you can drill on any report to see the overall data set.
Thanks for that, Pat. I thought before we finished our webinar today, I'd briefly take you back and show you some of the administration settings, because clearly you're going to own this. And what I just wanted to show you is really, really easy to own the system. And here you have just a couple of basic settings. So for instance, the user settings, here we set the to-do processes, the workflow. You have application settings. So you can add additional scenarios if you want to test those. You can add additional currencies, reporting units, contract types. You can add custom fields to that. Also importantly here, you can configure the alerting date. So if you want to be notified as to when a particular unit has or hasn't completed their disclosures, this will again support that process and give you that immediate notification and the status of those items. And of course, that's reflected within the workflow. And lastly, of course, this is where you would set the currency rates. Clearly, we want that to be owned by an administrator rather than an end user.
Okay, thank you. So I'd like to extend a big thank you to my colleagues Chris and Pat there for taking us through the application. So we have some time now for some questions. We have had a couple of questions come in through the course of the presentation, so I'll just excuse me while I go through a few of these here. First of all, the question, does the software manage contracts and leases over time with ability to modify and recalculate leases where applicable? Excuse me. Yes. So one of the core capabilities of Board, which is the platform on which the application you've just seen is built, is versioning and scenario management. So what this means is that a lease contract can be modified and calculated several times if required, as well as managing any modifications to the lease during its contract period. So maybe the lease term has changed, or the discount rate has changed, or the lease payments have changed. So all of that stuff can be recorded, versioned, and recalculated as required. So hopefully that answers that question. The next question we have here, does this solution require approvals to be logged in a workflow for modifications of leases? And so, once again, so another core piece of the platform is, or rather the platform's functionality, is the workflow and approval, which have been included into this lease application. You may remember Chris and Pat have discussed that. So really what we're doing here is by taking advantages of the segregation of duties capability, specific users can be assigned to own parts or all of a process, and the activity that they do and the progress they make can be recorded, audited, time-stamped, that kind of stuff, and then monitored and improved. So, a complete business owner could maybe split up a particular piece of work to 3 people, for example, who have different interests in different parts of that role. And then as they complete the tasks that they've done, that can be monitored and recorded back and approved by the business process owner. Okay, another question we have here. Is the solution able to categorize and allocate leases to a portfolio where applicable? Once again, the checklist area, which is a part of the overall workflow, that's where we can provide qualitative analysis of the leases. So depending on the nature of the contract, each lease would be assigned to a specific category. Okay, we've got another one here. Can journal entries and other reports be seamlessly integrated with existing financial journals? Once again, yes, the application has a procedure that it automatically extracts journals that have been calculated, so they can be integrated into any existing financial journals you may have. It's also important to remember that the lease application is not a point solution for one particular purpose. Now, it is built on a platform. The platform is a toolkit which is highly flexible and has wide-reaching capability to serve the rest of your business. So, whilst you may be addressing a particular issue with lease reporting right now, Board has the ability to integrate with other systems to bring data in or share data back according to your changing requirements. I think we've got time for just another question here. Let's a question about SAP. So, can we generate transactions into the SAP journal section and also extract data to spreadsheets? So yeah, we have the ability to interact with a wide set of data sources, but in fact more than 30 dedicated data connectors, of which SAP is one of them. And certainly extracting to Excel is easy to perform. It's simply a click of a button from the user interface, which is, as you've seen in the demonstration there, it's a web interface. So anybody with a web browser can be interacting with the system and also extracting data out to Excel. Okay, so I think we need to wrap things up here to meet our time. Thanks again to Chris and to Pat for the demonstration of the product. Thank you to everybody who have joined us for the webinar. I hope you found it interesting. I hope you've may come back in touch with us and talk to us further about the requirements you may have to take control of your lease reporting in the future. So once again, thank you everybody for joining, and have a great day.